There was once a man who lived with his wife on Ngoma Hill in southern Rwanda. He owned a big tract of land on which he used one section to grow various types of crops, while the rest was allocated for cattle. Since the man was an only child to his parents, his community despised him because he did not have relatives. This situation was worsened by the fact that the couple had one girl child. It was very unfortunate for the couple because in those days, a family which would not provide a warrior to defend his nation in times of war was considered useless. When the man realized that his wife could not give birth to other children, he decided to provide his only daughter with a boy's training. Her name was also changed to GATWAZA and was trained in various martial tactics where she excelled. She grew up into such a fierce warrior that her prowess spread throughout the region. In archery, she never missed her target and she could accurately hit an object 1 kilometer away. In wrestling, no man ever beat her while her high jump record remained unbeaten for many centuries. Above all, nobody knew that she was a girl except 2 neighbors. Neighbors soon grew envious of GATWAZA's father. They tried to kill him so that they would inherit his wealth, but they failed. Then they decided to report him to the king. They told him that there was a man in Ngoma who despised his majesty, adding that he even collaborated with foreign armies in order to overthrow the kingdom. They also informed the king that this man did not have a son to help defend the nation in case of any invasion. The king summoned the man immediately. On reaching the royal palace, the king told him, "Man, I have been informed that you are very rich while you do not have anyone to inherit your vast wealth. I therefore want to split your property and divide it among those who can contribute to the country's security in case of foreign invasion. You may then join your collaborators and stay in their country." The man informed the king that all those were lies, adding that he actually had a son whose name was GATWAZA. On hearing this, the king knew that his accusers were liars because he had heard of that name and all the praise associated with it. He exclaimed, "So you are the proud father of the famous GATWAZA? I would like you to send him here as soon as possible. Since he is your only child, I will give you several faithful servants who will also protect you against your enemies." 1 week later, GATWAZA appeared at the royal palace, accompanied by her father. They were welcomed and GATWAZA was introduced. Soon, interviews which were aimed at determining her skills in archery, long and high jump as well as wrestling were administered. The king was amazed at GATWAZA's capabilities and wondered why nobody had informed him about the young man. He was convinced beyond doubt that GATWAZA was the country's most skilled young man. He therefore selected 10 servants and asked them to accompany GATWAZA's father back to his home. He asked them to protect him and stay with him. He then bade them goodbye. The following day, GATWAZA accompanied the king on a hunting expedition. In those days, hunting was a very useful activity that idle warriors turned to in times of peace. They would carefully plan an ambush for the unsuspecting animal in exactly the same way they would do for their enemy before any attack. The best target was the animal's neck. Once hit, the animal would be rendered motionless due to its broken neck. An arrow that hit the animal's limbs would be considered a miss, while warriors who were responsible for such misses would be excluded from the king's group in future hunting expedition. A herd of buffaloes was sighted grazing about 100 meters from where the king was. The hunters cautiously observed the herd for some time, after which they chose their target. They took their positions. They crawled stealthily until they reached 20 meters from the unwary herd. Using a secret code that served as an order to attack, a swarm of arrows whistled towards the targeted animal. It lay down instantly while the rest of the beasts scampered for their dear life. The hunters walked towards the fallen buffalo. There was only one arrow that had hit the neck. It was GATWAZA's. The king marveled and went home convinced that with a sharpshooter like GATWAZA, his kingdom was invincible. GATWAZA's colleagues at the king's palace never knew that she was a girl. They had always seen her in boys' attire. She had not developed breasts because of her strenuous exercises. Besides, her father had explained to her their state of affairs, which motivated her to try her very best to look like a boy. She had done this to her own and her father's satisfaction. After some time, the king planned an invasion against a neighboring kingdom that had threatened him several months earlier. That kingdom's army had occupied part of his territory for a long time. Plans were made, and one day before they left for the war front, the queen requested her husband to leave behind GATWAZA to protect her. The king agreed, and the following day, they left. In the evening, the queen asked GATWAZA to stay in the palace. After everyone else had gone to sleep, she called GATWAZA, offered him some good wine, and then told him, "You see how I have painfully tried to convince the king to leave you behind. It is because I love you. I want you to spend with me all the nights that the king will be away on the war front. Nobody will ever know about it." GATWAZA objected and replied to the queen, "It is well known that if Her Majesty indulges in such acts, the king never comes back from the war front." The queen tried to convince GATWAZA that nothing would happen to the king, but GATWAZA ignored her. In her futile attempt to persuade GATWAZA, she said, "If the king died, I would make sure that you inherit the kingdom. In such circumstances, you would be the king while the first would be your wife," and the queen this disturbed GATWAZA, who left her alone and chose to remain at the gate throughout the king's absence. The worried queen decided to take revenge. When the king came back from the war front, she accused GATWAZA of having tried to sleep with her. This greatly upset the king, who called GATWAZA immediately. He asked people to tie him up and immediately behead him. After being tied, he asked for permission to say his last word, but in the absence of everyone else. The king obliged and asked everybody to leave. Then GATWAZA stripped naked. The king was surprised to notice that GATWAZA was indeed a girl. Due to strenuous exercises, her breasts had not been well developed. It is at this point that the king realized what the queen had tried to do. GATWAZA had always looked like a very handsome boy who had secretly attracted the queen as well as other female servants within the royal palace. The king called his wife, who was speechless at what she saw. She decided to run away from the royal palace. Servants tried to stop her, but the king intervened. He asked them to let her go wherever she wanted. The king asked GATWAZA to dress up and called his advisors, to whom he narrated the whole episode. They unanimously advised him to take GATWAZA as his wife. Thereafter they had many children and their kingdom flourished.